Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can know where the conversation is taking place. Also, if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. And by the way, in the case of YouTube and Facebook, make sure you hit that notification button. That way you'll be notified as soon as we go live, and you can participate in the live chat as the program is going on. Also, make it a point to visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It is the place to go to get all of your Pro 2A swag. Trust me, if you want it, it is there. Tons of cool designs are uploaded all the time. Stuff for the home, stuff for the office. Even we got the COVID masks for you. So even if you don't want to wear a mask, but you kind of got to if you need to go someplace, well, guess what? You can make sure you can send the appropriate message. Now, the best part about it is every dollar that you spend goes right back into the fight for a right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right, folks. Well, let's get into today's topic. You guys know that we're pretty much where I'm based here in California. And so one of the things that we find in particular in California is the whole idea of rules and following rules. That only applies to people who are on the minority side of an issue. So if the majority party believes a certain way, for them, the rules really don't matter. Not only do the rules not matter, but when it comes to instituting law, they're going to flat out ignore their own rules just because it's like, why bother? For them, it is ethical because they have the power to do it. And so there's one such issue, SB 118, that was passed here in the state of California. Let's just say that once again, it is evidence of how they have broken their own rules. And this is a measure that would creates a new classification of assault weapons in the state of California. And to talk a little bit about it, we have a friend of the program and a dear friend of mine, my big brother in the 2A fight, and that would be Mr. Sam Paredes of Gun Owners of California. Sam, welcome to the program.
Craig, it's always a pleasure to be with you, little brother. I miss our chats, and I'm glad we are doing it. And there's a lot of information that we can share on this bill that your listeners need to know.
Exactly. So, first of all, let's talk about the details of the bill itself. So now this measure creates a new classification of assault weapons in the state of California. Why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about that with our viewers?
Sure. It does several things. Number one, it creates this new classification because there are firearms out there, and your listeners know they're gun savvy. There are firearms out there that cannot be defined as rifles because they're not designed to be fired from the shoulder. Therefore, they are not required to follow any of the characteristics restrictions. They are not shotguns, and they are not handguns. And typically, they are the AR platformed. We would consider them pistols, but many of them have the arm brace and are not designed to be fired from the shoulder. Therefore, they are not defined either by the federal government. The ATF doesn't have a definition for them, and the state of California did not have a definition for them. Well, they came up with a definition, and they came up with a name, and they are calling them pythals or pithals, depending on how you want to inflect the I. And they include these all of the AR style handguns that they use arm braces or use the buffer tube, where you can actually put your cheek on it. And so they have magically learned that this gun exists, even though it's been around for a very long time, years. And they decided that no, Californians cannot own these guns. Those are assault weapons. Again, the definition of an assault weapon was invented by the California State Legislature prior to 1989, when the first assault weapons ban was created and passed here in the state of California. The term assault weapon was never found in any of the lexicon of military or arms, books or anything. Yes, there was a definition for an assault rifle, but not an assault weapon. And Craig, you and I know that they defined them in order to demonize a certain ugly, black-looking, scary sort of a gun that, if you leave it on the table, can jump up and down and shoot a lot of people all by itself.
I'll tell you, it's funny. It reminds me of Trevor Noah. He has this in his comedy routine. He starts off in his routine and he talks about, he's like, first of all, they're not called zebras. They're called zebra. He said, and because you do not have them, you do not get to name them. Right. And I always think of myself, I'm like, you people hate these things. So why do you get to name them?
Yes.
It is beyond idiotic. And what's crazy about this is, now just maybe share with the audience, how many of these, what was the term again? Diffles?
Piffles. P-I-F-L-E.
Piffles.
Piffles or pifles.
Oh, yeah. Pifle. Okay. So how many of these have been, how often are these used in crimes in the state of California?
Well, actually, I'll do you one better. How often have they been used in the commission of a crime anywhere in the country?
I'm sure I can guess. But
and this isn't a heart.
No, that's not a heart. Absolutely zero.
That's correct.
And yet, for some reason, they've decided that they want to ban them.
Yes. So what they did is they banned all importation, manufacturing, purchasing of these guns. Basically, from now on, if you owned one prior to September 1st of 2020, you are grandfathered in and allowed to keep it if you register it as a California assault rifle. That means you have to go through all of the paperwork, do all of the pictures and the submissions, and follow all of the regulations that are going to be established specifically for these types of firearms by the Department of Justice. And we know how it always works out when they do that. And then if you have it registered and you have that piece of paper that says the California Attorney General's office says that you have a registered assault piffle, and then you will be able to keep it. But like all other assault weapons, when you die, it dies. Mm-hmm. And in particular, that's true because this specific category of assault weapons, California assault weapons, they will not allow you to joint register it. In other words, right. You can't register it with your wife or with your child, so that when you die, they can still own it, and the life of the firearm will be extended somewhat. But when you die, the gun dies. It has to either be disassembled, destroyed, sold outside of the state of California, turned into the police. You have to get rid of it one way or another. And remember, they will know that you have it. And the one thing that gets around faster in the state of California, even faster than tax bills, is death certificates.
Oh yeah.
Once somebody dies, boom, everybody knows about it. It's magic. I don't understand.
And you can. I think it's safe to assume that it would not be long before there are law enforcement officers outside of the individual's home there to confiscate the weapon.
That's correct. The Department of Justice wouldn't like to save money and make a phone call and say, hey, you have one of these registered assault weapon piffles, and we see that the owner died. So what has been the disposition of it? Was it disassembled? Was it taken outside of the state of California, or sold, or turned into the police, or destroyed, or what? And then somebody could say, well, yeah, when they died, we disassembled it and turned it into a full size California compliant or featureless gun, and it is no longer a piffle. So no, they're going to send the DOJ agents to knock on the door, and even though they're not going to have a search warrant, they're going to make a lot of noise. They're going to have the lights on and the sirens going in the streets, and all the neighbors are going to know that something is going on at your house when they say, we want this gun. And they don't have a track record of saying, what has happened to this gun? No. No, it's, we want it, and let us in so we can get it.
We know that by how they've enforced apps, because instead of, we pushed for a long time to try and get the DOJ to actually just send letters to people who are in apps, letting them know that they were there and letting them know how they could rectify it. The one thing I'll give Javier Becerra was he actually finally listened and did that, and then took credit for taking thousands of guns off of the list, when in actuality, probably thousands of people who weren't supposed to be on the list probably just fixed what they needed to fix.
That's absolutely correct. They found out that, golly, a lot of these people actually complied with the law. You know, we're not. It's not like they're tracking hardened gang members or organized crime members or killers and mass shooters or no. No, they're tracking people that got into a bar fight and lost their right, or have a restraining order because of a divorce, or all manner of really picky-unish sort of things that don't make people criminals, but gets them on the apps list. And the Attorney General likes to treat them all like they are hardened, hardcore criminals, and use the full force of the law to try to find out what the disposition of these guns is, or whatever the proper English, yo no hablo inglés, so so no joint registration. You're exempt prior to September 1st if you register it.
Right.
And
by the way, we know once they get into your gun safe, everything else in there is fair game.
Absolutely. Everybody who owns a gun safe and they put their guns in their gun safe or in a gun room or whatever they do, they should put just write out a sign, because when they're there yelling and screaming, sometimes it's really hard to think. The adrenaline is pumping. You're scared. You don't know what to do. As a reminder, tape a piece of paper on your safe or on the door where you keep your guns and say, the contents of this room are not available to anybody. Permission is not granted. Here's the phone number for my lawyer. Give them a call, and we'll see you sometime in the future when you have a search warrant.
There you go.
So that is something that you can do, and will remind you of what your rights are, and you can exercise those rights, because many of the people that are charged with possession crimes and things like that, they're situational. They're not really crimes, but they appear to the agents who are there also pumped up and wanting to add to the pile of guns they've confiscated, so that the Attorney General can have a press conference and say, look at this mountain of guns that we've taken away from hardened criminals.
And they don't hold press conferences when they give you your guns back, if they give you your guns back. And in many cases, I mean, we had one case where literally they thought it was an assault weapon because the muzzle device looked like they said, well, that looks like a flash suppressor. And they're like, it's not. It's just a regular muzzle device. It's a muzzle brake.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take it in and test it. 6 months later, they hadn't tested it. And finally, they went to court, and they finally just got them to say, tell you what, we'll drop all the charges, but we're going to keep the firearm and destroy it.
Well, that would be a government taking.
Yes.
Under the admission of their own part that they were incorrect in doing what they did. And so it's crazy. Now, Craig, I know you know that SB 118 also had another provision in it that affects gun owners.
Please share.
Oh, yes. It last year there was a bill that was passed that created the a requirement that people have to buy precursor parts to build guns through a California licensed precursor part dealer. And everybody who had a ammunition vendor's license or a dealer's license was automatically added to that list, and then other people can register as a licensed precursor part vendor. Now, that means that when you want to buy parts to repair or to build your legal AR or AK, or really any gun, if they are considered precursor parts by the Department of Justice, you're going to have to register those parts, buy them, have a background check conducted like you do for the purchase of ammunition, and you're going to be limited to purchasing one part per month. So if you need to buy some, now the legislature gave the Department of Justice the ability to define what precursor parts are.
And we all
so
know the
they're
Department of Justice knows a whole lot about guns.
oh yeah. So technically, springs, pins,
Hmm.
trigger shoes, sights, all of these things are precursor parts that are required to put onto a gun in order to make it work. So that means that if you're going to build a legally build a firearm or repair a firearm, you're going to be able to buy one part per month. So if you have multiple pins that have worn out, you can buy one pin per month.
Hmm.
Springs, you're going to be able to buy one spring per month. And the interesting thing is that a lot of springs and pins and screws and stuff like that are not unique to gun
Right.
stores or gun
Yep.
manufacturers. You can actually go to Lowe's or Home Depot or your Ace Hardware or wherever you want to go and get the appropriate springs, the right size, right tensions, or stock, and then cut them and manufacture them to the proper size. And so, are they going to make Home Depot and Lowe's and Ace Hardware become precursor part vendors? If somebody says, "Yeah, I'm building my gun and I want this spring stock or this pin stock in order to make some nice oversized pins, or stronger or lighter tension springs and stuff like that." It's a mess. You're giving the attorney general the ability to expand his
Right.
ayatollahness,
Right.
his imperial power to decide. Technically, we believe he will be legislating through regulation
Well, and
by
that's nothing new in the
defining.
state of California. What's nothing new even nationally, where they abdicate legislature because they lack knowledge and information on an item on a subject. They abdicate their lawmaking responsibility, their legislative responsibility, and they pawn it off onto some department full of unaccountable bureaucrats that can change
Correct.
their interpretation anytime they want.
How do you
It's
spell bump stock? You know.
exactly. Exactly. That's why, folks, I keep telling y'all, I know a lot of folks out there were like, I don't own a bump stock. I'm like, no, you don't understand. If they can do this with this firearm part that you may or may not like or care about, they can do that with just about any firearm part.
That's correct. And
And it,
or firearm parts. I mean, rubber
yes,
bands,
right.
belt loops that you can do to mimic a bump stock. What are they going to do? Ban those or register? I'm going to go buy a pair of pants, but you're going to have to go through a background check in order to get it because your belt loop's going to be used as a bump stock.
Oh, and by the way, this is built on the same system that the ammunition background check was built on, right? So we
No,
know how well that's gone.
yeah, that's absolutely sure. So that bill was actually passed last
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
In SB 118, what they did is they said, "Oh, this is so important." And last year, the bill said that it was going to go into effect July 1st of 2025 because it's going to take a while for DOJ to decide and go through the regulations and define all of
Hmm.
these parts, what is and what isn't, and all of that stuff. But the legislature decided, you know what? Screw them, DOJ. You're going to have to do it with the turbochargers on, and it's going to go into effect 7/1/22. So they moved the effective date of the bill for 2 years, and so in 2 years we're going to have to go through a vendor, a licensed
Hmm.
vendor, to buy our firearms parts.
This sounds like, I mean, there's a lot going on in relation to firearms, the technology, and all of that in this bill, and one would have to assume that this bill got a full vetting in policy committees in both houses of the California Legislature.
Craig, I love you, man. You are a man of high moral standards. Logic reigns supreme between those two ears of yours, which is a beautiful attribute. But the fact of the matter is, um, there was no policy committee that considered these issues. The legislature used a budget trailer bill. Now, the real quick Reader's Digest version is that when the legislature passes the budget, they pass all of the expenditures and how much is budgeted for various activities. Then they pass budget trailer bills that are the enacting legislation that creates the mechanisms or allows them to actually spend that money for their purpose that was in the budget. Well, um, the attorney general wanted this so badly that he had this language that was policy related, very technical information. He didn't want it to go through a hearing, so he had it jammed into the Public Safety Committee omnibus trailer bill. There's stuff on youth prisons. There's all kinds of other stuff in this, very large bill.
Stuff on
And
pharmacies, all of that.
yeah,
It's a monstrous bill.
yes, and so there was no hearing,
Right.
hearing on the policy on this, and they said, basically, you know, tough toast. That this is, we, like you said earlier, we have the power. This is the way we're going to do it, and this will ensure that it gets through with little or no debate, even on the floor, because it's a implementing bill. They tried to hide it. We caught them. We protested mightily, and they basically said, you know what? We're in charge, and you guys are the sheeple following us, and we're going to do what we're going to do to you, whether you like it or not. So you might as well bend over and smile.
And that is just, unfortunately, that is the majority. That is the majority opinion in the state, California State Legislature, California State government. The politicians, they feel like because they can do it, it is ethical, it is moral, it is ethical, and it is right, simply because they have the power to do it. And I always say this. I say this to people who agree with us on this issue, and I say this to people who disagree with us on this issue. If they're going to do this to us on our issue, it's only a matter of time before they do it to you on your issue. And then you're going to come and you're going to be like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I'm going to be like, what mean we?
Yeah.
What do you mean we?
Yeah.
You already let us get screwed over. So why would or should we stand up for something that's important to you?
That's right. The Gadsden flag that's behind your head should be our motto right now, and it should be all of our motto. Don't tread on me.
Right.
That is the way all of the various interest groups who have to do with civil liberties and freedom and have to be under that mindset. And if they're not, they're going to get run over by those people who don't care about our rights, who don't care about the Constitution, who bastardize the English language, the intention of our founding fathers, and the rulings from the Supreme Court. Unless it rules in their favor, they just ignore it, give it the middle bird, do whatever they want because they're in charge here in California. And then when we say, well, we're going to go to court and see about that, they say, oh, you go right ahead. We have endless pools. We have rainbows that deposit their money here at the state capitol to hire the attorneys we need.
No. Deposit our money. Because it's our money that's going to be used.
Yeah. So we're fighting ourselves, and then we have to give more to fight ourselves. But that's what we have to do, Craig. And I know your listeners know that. I know that they understand that we have to fight in court, we have to fight in elections, and we have to fight in the legislature. Every area where our gun rights are affected, we have to be engaged and involved in those arenas. And it takes dedicated people who can focus all of their attention on what it is that we're doing. And that's why, we exist. That's why Gun Owners of California exists. That's why Firearms Policy Coalition exists. They've been doing beautiful work in the courts lately, especially, which we are very excited about and very supportive of. And all of the other groups, CRPA, NRA, NSSF, even Safari Club and other organizations have been involved in this fight here. But it's got to go beyond firearms rights for people to stop the enslavement that's going on the part of the legislature. And you know what? They really stepped in the middle of a very deep cow patty that was still moist and steamy when they allowed for remote voting and considered proxy voting and all that stuff, when their own attorney, the California the legislative council came out and said, this is kind of against the Constitution of the state of California, and you can't really do that. They did it anyway. So they came out with a written opinion, casting great doubt on the legality and the constitutionality of that. And so,
if I were matter of fact, if I were active in opposing any bill that wound up getting signed into law, there would be a great desire. There should be a great, it should be a class action lawsuit. Get a bunch of groups together to pitch in, sue the state legislature, and undo everything that they passed.
Every single vote that included a proxy vote or a not being present vote, remote voting, uh, is in jeopardy. Whether it was they did it only in the committee and not on the floor, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. If that was a function of the legislative process, the legislative life of these bills, we're going to challenge it, and we
Right.
are right now working to put together a large coalition of people whose oxes have been gored by the leftist. They're not liberal. They are leftist, hardcore, radical
I,
folks in the legislature who are running the show.
I will tell you, and this is just, this is kind of getting a little off topic, but I've been doing a lot of reading lately about Marxists, Karl Marx, Marxism, and
Mm-hmm.
and I will tell you, I've developed to a certain degree a better understanding and exception of the fact that there are many who are on the left who are liberals, and liberals that we may disagree with. We may disagree as a conservative. I may disagree with liberals on what role government should play in our everyday lives.
Right.
But what at least most liberals believe that there should be a government, and their goal is not the complete upheaval of our democratic republic.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who look like liberals, who sound like liberals, who their main goal is anarchy. Their whole goal is to undo the entire system, to tear
Mm-hmm.
everything down. And what I tell my liberal friends is this: what you need to understand is once they're done silencing us conservatives, you're next. Because
That's correct.
once they get rid of the conservatives, their next step is is the bourgeoisie, right? Their next step is y'all, and once y'all are gone, then the proletariat can then take over, and needless to say, that's never really ended well for the people.
Craig, you're absolutely correct. And just to quote Karl Marx, he said, don't worry about the elected people and what's going on, because sooner or later you're going to elect us. You're going to elect us to the legislature. That's going to happen, and their goal is to own not only the means of production, but the ownership of the production, so that they can dole it out the way they see it. It should be doled out according to their own views. So
Yeah.
when they own the means of production and the actual production facilities,
Mm-hmm.
that's, I mean, we're hearing that now, folks.
Yes.
That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And our liberal friends, Karl Marx also had a name for those people who add to the body of support for them early on. He called them useful idiots. Bingo. Yeah. And once their usefulness is done, they're going to be gobbled up and they're going to be stomped out, just like those of us on our side.
Somehow they think that they can appease the Marxists, and there is no appeasement. And that's what they fail to understand is you don't understand the goal of the idea is to tear the entire thing down and rebuild it
Mm-hmm.
in their image with them controlling. And anyone who believes in whether you want to call it a democratic system or you want to call it our democratic or our republic or democratic republic, that's not their goal and that's not their desire.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, before
Not
we
at
go,
all.
I want you to let folks know how can they follow the work of Gun Owners of California.
Go to our website at gunownersca.com, GUNOWNERSCA, or Google Gun Owners of California. All the things we've got going on, our latest newsletters, updates on court cases, on amicus briefs. The issue that we just put out has got a voter guide for state assembly and state senate races throughout the state of California, and the results of the legislative process and what happened with all of these bills. So we invite you, give us a call at 916-984-1400. And Craig, I know you've got listeners that don't reside in the Golden State, and they're in free America out there. Folks, please pay attention, because what is happening here is spreading I always say what happens in California either affects or infects the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And I just had a conversation with somebody who talked with a friend when they were considering moving to another state that we would consider to be a conservative state. And they said, well, you know what, man, you've got 3 to 5 years, because they're now talking about all of the things that you guys have going on in California, in our beautiful state.
Yeah.
And as long as Californians keep moving to Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, Colorado, Nebraska, Tennessee, as long as we keep going there, you know, a lot of the people that are going there are taking the politics of California with them, and it's going to change the face of politics unless we turn around and do this "don't tread on me" and get that attitude and start fighting back right now. Right now. So that's where we are, Craig.
Right now, California is the front line. You don't. Those of you in free America, you don't want your state to be the front line in this fight. Trust me.
Absolutely.
You don't. Anyway, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the program. Thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for all the mentorship that you've provided me. Looking forward to talking with you again real soon.
Thank you, Craig. I look forward to it very much myself.
All right,
Stay safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Paredes, Gun Owners of California. All right, folks. Well, hey, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.